All right, everybody, welcome to the Rogue World podcast. I'm your host, Dusky Rogue, and I have one of the coolest guests that I'm so excited for, Kolt Phillips. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Man, Colton and I, we've known each other for a short time in the retrospect of things, but it's felt like a long time. Like it's like you connect with somebody on like a deeper level and we've only known each other for this like a year, maybe.
School year.
Yeah, a school year. So because we both have littles that just went through kindergarten together, and that's kind of like where we reconnect. And you grew up with my wife back in the day in the heart of Provo. Man, Colton, I want to know kind of what your story is and kind of what has built you into the man today. I know you've gone through a lot. I want you to share kind of where this successful man that we see now, this entrepreneur, this guy who's ripped, who's got a great business and, has a happy family. Like what has your life looked like and where have you built that from?
So it all starts like, born and raised in Provo. The oldest of the family. I have a younger brother. And back to touch on with going to school with your wife, she was a couple years older. Those days, like I was heavily involved in sports. I would do football in the fall, wrestling in the winter, and snowboarding, and then wakeboarding, in the summer.
Active kid.
Baseball in the spring. So, but I didn't realize, like growing up, I just played because it was fun, right? And then when you get into high school, it's all size, it's all everything. And I didn't understand. Well, I did understand.
When you're getting into high school, so when you're growing up, you're playing and everything like that. What was some things that, like, going through high school that you faced? What are some challenges that you might have faced? Because obviously, you're not thinking when somebody goes into high school, it's a very big time of change in their life.
Right.
And, there's people that, they had a great high school experience like myself. I loved high school. Like glory days. I'm one of those guys. I'm like, back in my day, every time, like my high school's right down the street. Every time we pass it, I'm like, hey, I went to high school there. Because I'm like, Westlake,
Westlake.
So what are some things that you kind of like, not necessarily struggled with, but that you had to realize very quickly in going through high school?
What I struggled with was my size. My freshman year in high school, I was only 86 pounds.
Dang.
And it wasn't a thing to step on the scale and I was busy playing, right? And then the hardest thing was going through like football, and I didn't miss a day of practice, and then getting cut.
Damn.
And, football in high school, it's all through the summer. So you're waking up bright and early, you're there for a couple hours. And so it's like, I felt defeated that I just wasted my whole entire summer and had nothing to show for it, right?
Yeah.
And so I remember going home after being cut and just feeling like, is this how it's going to be the next 4 years? And my dad gave me the Michael Jordan talk of how he got cut from his high school basketball team. And Michael Jordan, look what he turned that into.
MJ himself.
And so that kind of at a young age flipped that switch in me towards like, okay, it didn't work out this year, but if I keep the same schedule of like working out and trying, then I can make it happen.
Yeah.
So then, went through high school. I wrestled. I wrestled all 4 years at varsity. I was the 103 pounder.
Yeah. The little guy. See, when I wrestled through high school, I was the biggest guy.
Okay.
So I wrestled 285.
The heavyweight.
So the heavyweight. Yeah. So like to have, I used to wrestle our little 100-pound kids. Like we used to just have a blast, and we thought it was so funny. The biggest guy and the smallest guy, grappling and everything.
Oh yeah.
But you go through high school and you go through this tenacity of, okay, wrestling is my thing, and obviously putting on weight.
Sure.
And going through that, like that's not easy for a small guy. That's not easy.
It wasn't. My main goal was like I always had people tell me what I couldn't do, right? And now, like when I hear people tell me or like filling my head with doubts, I know that's coming from their own limiting beliefs.
Yeah.
Right. That's just them projecting. Back then, I didn't know that, and so like when they would put those on me, I would be like, well, maybe they're right.
Yeah.
But I had this goal that, like, because there was a lot of athletes in my family, and then in my extended family, that I watched them play at a high level, but they didn't go on to college.
Yeah.
And so my goal was I wanted to be the first one in my family to play college ball.
Okay.
Didn't matter if it was baseball. I just wanted to play.
Yeah.
And that's what I worked towards. And my senior year, I had started to hit into a growth spurt. Football year, we did really well. I ended up quitting midway through wrestling because my passion was football and baseball, and I used wrestling to just stay in shape.
Yeah.
But baseball, I started off and I was having the best year of my life. Then, like the first region game, it was windy. I played second base. I was a second baseman, and there was a pop fly over my head that I would always run after and get, but the wind was coming head on, and so it carried it into right field. And I'm running, and me and the right fielder are going full speed, and we collide, and I broke my elbow.
Oh.
And I was like, "That's it. That's
Dang.
That's once again, all that hard work for nothing." So I got a screw put in my elbow, and the doctor said, "You're probably not going to play the rest of your senior season." And I wasn't taking that. So I said, "Well, what if I pitch?" He said, "Well, if you pitch and you don't, use your arm to like catch a ball or this or that, I could have you back in 3 weeks." So for the next 3 weeks, I had a sling on my arm, and I was chucking.
No way.
Yeah. And ended up pitching our last state game. After high school, I did a semester at Dixie State. Didn't play any sports there. I just worked out. And Dixie State is like that first year of college is when I finally grew into who I am. I grew 4 inches, put on a whole bunch of weight, and then got the opportunity to play college football in California.
Wow.
And so that's where, I took that opportunity because we grew up in Utah. The thing was you got to go on a mission.
Yep.
I was working towards that. And then this opportunity to play football came up, and I was like, look, if I don't take this now, like that's my dream, is to play at the college level. Who knows where I'll be in 2 years? And about, 13 years ago, that was a kind of a big no-no to do in Utah.
13 years ago, I served my mission 8 years ago is when I left on my mission. Dude, 8 years ago, if you didn't go on a mission in Utah, like an LDS mission, dude, people were like, they're going nowhere.
Yeah.
They're doing nothing with their life. Couldn't they defer for 2 years? I'm like, I don't know if you know this, but not everybody plays at BYU.
Right.
Yeah.
Sorry,
nothing against BYU at all, but it's great that they have the program that if you go on a mission, they're going to hold your spot for 2 years. But California doesn't do that.
No. They don't care.
They don't give a crap.
That ties in like perfectly because the first week I was there, was such a culture shock.
Really?
Because
So were you raised pretty strictly LDS?
Yeah,
Okay.
we were raised up in the church, and it was great growing up that way. Gave us values, gave us structure.
Gave you a really good in Utah. I feel like as well, it gives when you're a kid, gives you a great social life.
100%.
Like that's my only fear when it comes to like our kids.
Right.
Like obviously my daughter is being raised LDS by her dad, but when she's with us, she's not. And I imagine Madden's not going to church every week and everything like that. That's my only fear about like no longer practicing the LDS faith, is making sure that my kid still has a great social life.
Which, knowing you, I know that she will.
Yeah. But I mean, like, you could imagine, because I mean, with you growing up, you had literally you liked, for me, I liked going to church because that means I could mess around and hang out with my friends.
Yeah.
I loved scouts on Wednesdays because it was literally a dedicated time where my parents almost couldn't say no for me to go play with my friends.
And set shit on fire.
Yeah. And do all kinds of stuff. Right?
Yeah.
Like my best stories probably comes from an LDS activity of us doing something really stupid.
Yeah. The same.
So you get to California, huge culture shock. Is that like, this is your first time ever living outside of Utah?
Outside of Utah. Yeah. It forced me to grow up really quick. I knew California was different, but when I went out there, I was thinking it was going to be like Katy Perry's California Girl song.
Yeah.
And I get out there and it wasn't even close. But I made a lot of great relationships from there. And that's what was funny is when my teammates found out that I was from Utah, they're like, so how many wives do you have?
Yeah.
And
I love that question.
Being out there, I felt like I had more missionary experiences, and who knows, it's catch-22, but I felt like I had a lot more of those missionary experiences than if I were to go out.
Yeah.
Because I got to show my teammates like how I lived my life.
Yeah.
And they got to understand like the culture that I grew up in through me.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I was out there for a year. And that was what I was working towards. My goal was to, finish out the season and transfer to the U. And then I blew out my shoulder.
Nice.
And, that's at that moment, I really asked myself, it's like, I could push through it.
Like, do I want to keep putting myself through this?
Exactly. And college ball compared to high school ball, it's a full-time job that now they're getting paid for it. We didn't get paid for it, right? So I was like making $40 a week, stretching that for like food because California was fucking expensive. It was $6.50 a gallon for gas out there. And so it was like I had a busted shoulder. I was like, okay, at the time, I'm 20 years old. What's my quality of life going to look like when I have a family? Like, if I keep going at it, am I going to be able to pick and throw my kids up in the air? Am I going to have trouble going up and down the stairs?
Oh, man.
And I was done. It wasn't fun. I got to live my dream and decided it was time to come home.
What'd your parents and family think about that?
They were cool with it. One, because they knew that I was close to home and like safe. When I was living out there, it was the ghetto, man. And I kind of loved it. Like our neighbor, we lived in this, it's like 3-bedroom apartment, and there was 9 of us teammates living in there. So we had like 3 people sleeping in each room.
Oh, man.
And then if a teammate needed a crash, they'd sleep on the couch. It was just a place to sleep because we were
you were out working all day.
At school all day.
Yeah.
And our neighbor was a MS-13 gang member, like tattoos on the face, head, big fucker, right? And it's like the thing that I learned out there is it's all about respect.
Yeah.
And it's like if you go looking for trouble, you'll find it.
Yep.
But it's like if you treat them with respect and like stay in your own lane, it's fine. And we're getting ready for like our first game, and he's out there with his homies smoking weed, like, and it's the draft is just bringing the smoke right into my bedroom window, and we had a fan because we couldn't afford the AC, and it's just dumping the smoke right on my bed, and I'm like, dude, I'm getting fucked up. I got a game tomorrow, and went out and told him, hey, can you put it out? And he was like, he was with his boys, so he was like had to play his part, but at the same time he's like, yeah, that's fair. Like if you keep your music down on Sunday after your game,
Yeah.
when you're swimming. But my parents they came to my first game, the game that I actually busted my shoulder, and they saw the living situation. I didn't mind it, but it's not like here,
And your parents will always, no matter where you live,
Yeah.
I think your parents are going to be like,
they want the best for
Yeah.
you. And so I had a choice to make where we talked about where it's, do I keep going or come home and pivot? And the insurance didn't cover me to get my shoulder fixed out there.
what?
And so that kind of solidified my decision to come home. Came home, kind of putted around for a little bit, because what's hard is, and I think a lot of today's young people can grasp onto, is like when you have a goal and like, especially when you get to live it, when it ends like the way it did for me, it's sometimes you go all in on that, and then when it's done, you're kind of in this limbo state of like, now what?
Yeah.
And that's where I was for like 3 weeks, where I was like, I worked my whole entire life up to that point for that moment, and now it's done.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I don't agree with like having a backup plan, because if you have that safety net, you're not going to give it your all.
Yeah. You're not
every
going to go
time.
all the way.
But so I started asking, like, okay, well, what would be a fun job to do? What would I like to do? Like, I'd been around the construction sites with my dad growing up. I knew that was good money. So that's what I did while I was kind of figuring out. And I kind of fell into, I want to be a firefighter. So I started going to school for that. And then that's where I met the woman that I married. And we dated for a while, ended up getting married, and in between like studying for fire, I had this concrete job with her family where I was doing concrete coatings, and she got me out of working at retail. I was making $7 an hour folding t-shirts, and just couldn't make a living off of that. And
Yeah.
we both made it clear that that's what we wanted to work towards, was starting a family and getting married. And so I started learning the trade of concrete coatings. When it started out, I was just there to collect a paycheck. I didn't know if I was going to do concrete forever, but the more I did it, the more I started to really like it, where it's like you get to take something rough and make it beautiful that people are going to enjoy for probably longer than I'll be here.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
So in between studying for fire, I was doing that. And then I got a job to fight fire up at Sundance. And I did that for probably like 6 or 7 months. And then we got an actual like brush fire in our area. And dude, that was the sickest thing. Like, you show up and the mountainside's just ripping, and like we're putting this fire out and done, and then all these other crews show up, and that's all they did was fight wildfires. They didn't have to deal with like, oh, I've got chest pain, or I've fallen and I can't get up. You know? And I asked my chief, I was like, you can just do that as a job?
So wait, you're telling me
You're telling me
I could
there's
just
a chance
I can fight fires and only fight fires as a job
as a job.
as a firefighter.
Get the fuck out. He's like, yeah. And he's like, matter of fact, there's a class starting in 2 weeks at UVU that you can get your certification and do that. And he's like, I've actually been wanting to build up the wildland division. And so if you got certified, you and this other guy will be able to respond to these fires. I was like, sold. Because the medical side, I wasn't having it, dude. I just wanted to fight fire.
Yeah.
So I went through that course and absolutely loved it, dude. Like, school, when you're studying something that like excites you, it just seems to come quickly.
Heck yeah.
You know? And I met some really cool guys that were in different departments. And I was like, fuck, these guys are dialed. Like, that's who I want to work for. And so I got my certificate and then tested with Unified Fire Department. I tested with a couple other agencies, but I got a job offer with Unified. And that was the hardest work that I've ever done in my life, but not once did it ever feel like work. And the camaraderie with the guys, I mean, you're gone 16 days and you're home for 2 and then back out, you know? And so it's a grueling job, but it was awesome. I, fought fire in California and we did initial attack here, like right behind where you live. Was probably one of the craziest fires that I responded to. Do you want to dive into that, or do you want to?
Yeah, I do. I'm thinking about, because I remember when this whole hillside was on fire.
Yeah.
Dude, I was at EFY
Okay.
in Provo.
So you're watching
I'm
this.
from in Provo watching this.
Yeah.
And that's when you're here fighting it.
Yeah. So I was, at the time, I was stationed at Camp Williams.
Okay.
And, so we have all the Army guys around, but we had a gate right outside our station that we just hop on this, what is that, Redwood, and come over. So we finish PT, we get this call, and it's from our chief. It usually comes in from, dispatch, and our chief's like, basically, get the fuck over here now, because he lives over here.
Oh, really?
And so,
You better get your ass over here right now. My house is gonna be on fire.
Yeah, he's like,
you boys are gonna stand here in my yard.
He's like, Lehi's fucking here before you. Are you shitting me? Get over here. And so then it comes dispatch. We hop in the rig and we come out and it's like, we can't see anything. We're like, what are we talking about? We come over the hill and it's just thick black smoke ripping. And we're like, holy fuck, it's getting western, I'm driving the truck. I was the engineer. And so I'm like, lights and sirens down. It's like, very thrilling.
Yeah, Grand Theft Auto all the way.
Move.
But you're saving lives.
Saving lives. We turn up by this church over here. And I'll never forget this. It's like, for us, that's what we're trained to do. Like, you show up in a calm, we're how do I say it? We're extremely excited, right? Because we're going to put out fire. But we're trained to show up there calmly.
Yeah, it's game time.
It's game time. And it's right next to these people's houses. We're coming up the road, and I'm driving, and I'm trying to, in my mind, I'm like, okay, how am I going to get out of here? I'm trying to plan out, as we're driving, and I see this family running out. And they're just grabbing what they can to leave. One of them's got a picture of Christ that they're just putting in their car. The kids are crying. They've got, their clothes stuffing in. And they see us drive through and they just kind of stop and stare like, thank God, And we get up on the dirt and we turn in. We can see the smoke, but we have no idea
where the fire
is. So we come up this hill and kind of turn, and we're right at the head of the fire. Like, the wind's pushing it right at us. And we start feeling the heat through the engine. And it was like, holy shit, this is intense. We drive around, we meet up with the chief, and there was a Type 6, which is it's basically like a Ford F-350 that's got a couple hundred gallons of water on it. That was making a run at the fire, but it ran out of water. And so we tied in with him, had a guy hop out, and I'm just driving behind him as he's walking along, spraying it out. And they call it anchor, flank, and pinch, but we flanked and pinched the fire and put it out. And then they call it mopping up, where you're basically just douching the fire with all the hot spots so it won't start up again. And when we're leaving, going back down that road, it's like those families were watching us the entire time. And it's like, that's what was my job, what I got paid to do. And they're just like clapping and like thanking us. And yeah, it's
All
stuff
in a day's
like that.
work, man.
Yeah, just tip my hat. No, it was a good time. We had, so with Unified Fire, there was 3 different branches. There's Camp Williams, because they do a lot of live fire training. Anytime that they were doing like grenades or shooting guns, we would be positioned there in case it caught fire to put it out. But then there's the hand crew, which is like hot shots. They dig line. And then there was the engine crew. So I had the opportunity to work with all 3 divisions.
Wow.
My rookie year, which not everybody got that chance. So I felt very blessed. And I finished out the season with the hand crew, who they're now working towards a hot shot status, which is badass. And during this time, it was putting a lot on my wife. And because like my son was, I think, about 2 years old at the time. You know, I missed his 2nd birthday because I was on a fire. And when I was gone, she was holding the fort. She was, you know, and nothing that we went through was, in my opinion, worth like throwing the marriage away, but it didn't work out.
Because at this time, even though you're staying at Camp Williams, you're still gone for 16 days.
Yeah. And the Camp Williams gig was a little bit different than the hand crew, where during the season we were on for 2 days, off for 2 days.
Okay.
But while we were off, we were on call 24/7.
So, like, let's say you're fighting a fire for the 2 days that you're on, and it's still going.
You're
you don't
still
got
there.
2 days off.
You're
still going to
working.
be fighting that fire.
Yep. When you're with the hand crew and it's like a national resource, you get dispatched to California or wherever the fuck they send you to, and you're scheduled there for 16 days. You can extend to 21 days, and then you get 3 days off. But they're on that 2-week schedule and 2 days home schedule.
So basically, you fly home.
You don't fly, you drive.
Oh, man. So 2 days off, like, that does. So if you're, let's say you're in California for 16 days and you get your 2 days off, it's not worth it to come home.
Well, so they started that drive home. I mean, you're getting paid, right?
Oh, okay.
You get to the station, and then it's like, okay, your R&R starts now.
I know.
Whatever.
Okay, I'll see you back here in 48
On
hours.
Tuesday, basically, yeah.
Gosh.
And so while I was at Camp Williams, I mean, it was a nice schedule. We ran what was called initial attack, where, we're in a short area to where we can respond quickly and usually stop the fire before it
Goes anywhere.
turns into a national resource. With the hand crew, we were getting called to those fires that just blew up. And so at this time, we got called out to California, and this is where that whole scheduling thing can get fucked. I don't know if you remember when Spanish Fork lit up.
Yep.
So we were on that, but it was the first one, not the one that was right behind the homes. It was the one that was in like Thistle.
Okay.
And that fire was dead, but they had us there for like 7 days, and it was out. We were basically just hanging out. And so we got reassigned, so we went back to the station. But what happens is when they're trying to reassign you, if they don't do it within a certain amount of time, your clock starts over.
Oh my gosh.
So we're at this fucking fire. We get sent home. Our clock starts over. So now it's like what would have been like 6 or 7 days left, and then we got a couple days break. We have another 16 days to work. Then we get sent back to that same fire, which was a mistake. We were there for a little bit, and then they sent us to California. And so between that fire, I had been gone for 26 something days where I hadn't been home.
Gosh.
And, you know, it's from her.
Was that kind of the big one? Like the big, like the straw that broke the camel's back?
I think it had something to do with it, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because that's a month. That's a whole month.
Whole month gone.
And how old were you at this time?
26, I think.
Yeah. So, like, and how long were you guys married?
Let's see.
So, probably
2 years.
Yeah.
So it's like new marriage, new family, son's barely moving around.
Yeah. Is your wife working?
Was
she working?
She was working. She was a dental hygienist. Did like she put braces on and.
Okay.
And so it was like tapping all of the resources, right? Where it's like, I'm gone, but that's how like I'm able to provide for you guys. But it's just like it's a lot, and. Come home from the fire. Like I said, I've been gone for 20-something days. And I got home late at night, climbed in, like showered because I'm fucking filthy. Smell like shit and fire. And like you don't shower out there.
Yeah.
You know? And got all clean, climbed into bed. And she woke up in the morning. I'm expecting like, nice welcome home. Like, hey, I'm glad that you're home safe, this and that. We have breakfast, and she sits me down, and she's like, you know, long story short, I want a divorce. And when you're in fire mode, like, and this can be used in life too, it's like having like the wrong energy will keep you from where you're wanting to go. I made the comment like, great, you just fucking killed me. Because, like, if your mind isn't there, you can get yourself hurt, somebody else hurt. It's a big deal. And, you know, and here I am. I've got 2 days home, and Spanish Fork's just tearing up right now, and I can see it from where I was living. I was like, I'm only here for these 2 days, and that's where I'm going, you know? So let's deal with this. Let's finish the season out. We got one more fire and the season's over. And, you know, so we play.
How does a season work? Like, so during the hot season, you're like on. Are you off during the off, like completely off for like a couple months?
So the season, you've got essentially 6 working months, right?
Okay.
So I've been out of it for a while, so I'm not as sharp on it. But I think the season starts, like, you show up to the station in May. All of May, you're training, you're hiking, you're carrying the weight, you're doing drills. And then June 1st is when you're, like, active, if I'm correct. If anyone's listening and I'm fucking wrong, I'm sorry. It's been a while. But you're, so then it's usually from, like, then until end of September.
But, like, what's your work life on the off season?
A lot of people will collect like unemployment, so since they only work for 6 months, a lot of the seasoned firefighters will, at least some of them will work like a
Part-time gig or
part-time
something?
job just in the off season, but that's their main focus in the summer is fighting fire.
That's so interesting that they have like it's just a seasonal job of experts.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't like necessarily take care of you during the off season.
No, like you guys you'll like hang out with like the guys and stuff, but it's not like. I will say the cool thing with like Unified is they're the only department now that I know of, probably in the nation, that has sworn in wildland firefighters, meaning they've like the leadership's like the crew boss, the squad bosses, they work year round and they've got the benefits and stuff. It wasn't like that when I was doing it. Wildland, it's like, okay, 6 months is done. We'll see you next
See ya.
year. Yep.
Thanks for working your ass off and keeping everyone safe. We'll talk to you next year.
We'll see you next year if you're lucky.
Gosh. So, but before then, you have one more fire basically, which is Spanish Fork, right? And your wife just kind of laid it on you, like, hey, I want a divorce. How long was that conversation? Because when you talk about it, it sounds like it was
quick. It was pretty quick. I mean, obviously, I'm like, this has been long enough to where I just remember like what happened. I don't remember like he said, she said this and that. But like, she sat me down and it was like, hey, look, this is hard. I'm not happy. You're not happy. I'm basically done.
It sounds like, but it kind of sounded like you were happy though.
Oh yeah, I was fucking living my dream and fighting fire but like I got it, and it's that's the thing where we'll get into probably later is like, and when we did divorce is like realizing that there are things that you can do better.
Like what?
Well, for my situation, it's it's supporting that person. She supported me to live my dream. I was young and I wasn't as supportive as I could have been. Right? I put while I was gone, a lot of that stress and strain onto her to like basically hold down the fort.
Yeah, figure it out. I'm gone. I can't help you.
And I didn't have phone service. I couldn't call and check. It was very hard. And when I signed up for it, she was supportive in it. We knew it would be hard. We just didn't understand how hard. Because you're in butt fucking Egypt fighting fire. You're lucky if your phone works to take a picture.
Yeah. Because it's hot.
It's fucking hot.
Your iPhone's just like, it's too hot. We're not working.
Yeah, it's like, shit.
Gosh. So you finish out the season, and now you have to come back to this scenario now.
The hardest thing I was facing is we got that call to go to that fire, and this is playing in the back of my head, right? And the last thing I wanted to do was put one of my buddies at risk if I'm not focused, because you got, especially the Spanish Fork fire, you got shit
everywhere,
all directions, and so it's like your situational awareness, you've got to be dialed. And so I was like, okay, I'll give myself a couple days. Like, I didn't tell anyone. I just kind of kept it to myself. And I was like, if I am a liability rather than an asset, I'll go home. Like, it's just right down the road. It's not worth it. And to be honest, that was like the best thing for me, was being on that fire, because the time that I gave myself, we got sent to spike out, which means you're basically, instead of coming to the fire camp, getting a nice hot meal with all the other crews, you're up in the mountain close to the fire, so that when you wake up, while the fire's not ripping yet, you can get some work done. And we were up there and I didn't have phone service. So it was like I was able to just get lost in my work, but also kind of process
what was said. It's something you're not really prepared for, which is good. It's a good thing you're not prepared to potentially get divorced, and then to get divorced and everything. I find that, especially in Utah, it being it's a lot more accepted nowadays. But like, I mean, even me as, freaking 3 years ago, getting divorced is so frowned upon, and you just really don't know what you're doing.
100%, yeah.
So I can only imagine being up on the mountain and being like, hey, what does life look like for me? Either working this out with my wife or being without her.
Right. That's exactly how it is. And I don't know if it's a culture thing of that being like so difficult, but the sad thing is it is becoming more common nowadays.
Yeah.
Which sucks to see, just because going through it, it's hell.
Yeah. I mean, you kind of mentioned this a little bit, and you're like, I don't believe that anything that we were going through was worthy of a divorce.
Right.
Now, why?
There was no cheating. There was no like infidelity. There was no like, I was under the impression, like I grew up with old timers. So I was like, the squeaky wheel gets the oil.
Yep.
And so I'm like, I understand that I've been gone. We'll speed it up. I finished that season, came home, and the season was over, and we were able to start to rekindle that.
Okay.
Because I was home more, we were able to kind of sort through things. We like went to one of those marriage people to like talk it out.
And I would imagine, did you get paid pretty well during the season of you fighting fires? Like,
that was some of the best money that I had seen up to that point.
Yeah.
Right. We call it oats and honey.
yeah.
So it's like when you're on a fire, you get overtime and hazard pay. So it's like, if you're making like $20 an hour, you get a time and a half plus like, I think a time and a half.
Wow.
Don't quote me on that, but it was like once you hit your 40 or 80 hours, it was like,
You're making
damn good money.
Exact. And you're already probably getting paid. I think that, our firefighters and everything are underpaid because of what they do for us. But with what you're doing in that, you're probably not making minimum wage.
No. And the nice thing too is you really don't have any time to spend it.
Yeah.
You're home 2 days.
Yeah. So you're just able to just kind of load it up.
It's like, okay, are the bills paid? Is the house paid? We got food for you guys while I'm gone? Boom. What do you need?
Yeah.
Gone.
I got water and food here. They feed me oats and granola. I'll be good.
Yeah. MREs. And
Yeah.
we're solid.
So you're home now, and like you're able to kind of give more time. Did you kind of and you said like rekindle, did you kind of be like, okay, hey, this is a past problem now?
Yes and no. It got better before it got worse.
Okay.
And being home definitely helped because I was able to, spend time with the son, help her out. But this whole time, the hard thing that some people don't realize is when you're operating at that level during firefighting, like the normal person operates like here, right? But then you go from boom, because it's like there's fire and stuff. It's a high stress environment. And then the season just stops. So you've been used to doing this for 6 months. And so your body just is fucked. And that's the one thing they didn't tell me.
It's not really something you can prepare for.
No. You're
even if they did tell you.
Yeah, you go. And then it's like your body's used to operating at this high level, and then boom, the season's done. And then it's like your body's like, fuck, what do I do now?
Yeah.
So I had that going on for me. Plus in the back of my head, I'm like,
she's going to bring it up again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we go through the holidays, and this is where I experienced depression for the first time. Up to this point, I just thought when somebody said, "Oh, I'm depressed," I was like, "Quit being sad."
Yeah.
I didn't understand it.
Go eat a candy bar or something.
Yeah, like life's good. What the fuck do you have to be depressed about?
Yep.
Then it hit me, and I'm like, "Holy shit, this is like I understand now." It's a dark place to be.
Yeah.
And my body was out of the ringer, and when I was in the fire season, I was about 190 pounds in shape. But going through the depressive state and like having the divorce on the back of my head, and then like basically losing myself, I stopped taking care of myself. And that's a recipe of disaster. I wasn't coping the right way. I started drinking just to forget, that made problems worse. I wasn't abusive or anything like that. I couldn't figure out how to handle it.
Yeah.
And it got so bad that like I just basically lost my will to live, because it got to the point where I knew that the divorce was inevitable. It was coming. And my mental health was not in a place to deal with that. And so like it's hard to talk about. I felt like I had like a demon in me or something, right? And we had gotten in this fight. Couldn't even tell you what the fight was about. It just shows that it didn't matter. But I felt like I was doing more harm being here. Granted, my thinker wasn't on straight, but I felt like I was doing more harm than being here. And I remember sitting in the bathroom just like trying to process everything, and sort of like it felt like the demon took control, where it was like the next thing I know, I've got my gun in my hand. And then it's like that was the lights on for me, where it's like, okay, you need help. And I was so caught up thinking of like my life with her and I is over. Like how I identify as husband and wife, it's over. I've got a 2-year-old boy in there. I didn't think until like that point that it's like I still have a life with him. Even if this doesn't work out, I can be there for him. Like if this doesn't work out, like I'll figure out a way, we'll make it happen. And I put it back. She comes in like, what is going on? And I'm just like, I need help. Like if we get divorced, that's fine. But I am not strong enough right now to handle this. I just need somebody to talk to, So I got some help. The thing about like suicide talk is it's like, it's hard when you're in that dark place, right? Where I'm at now, I realize that when you're rock bottom at your deepest place, that is sometimes the best place to build a solid foundation and like rebuild of how you want your life to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
It takes a lot of work, but it can be done.
Yeah.
So I started meeting with like a therapist, getting my mind right. That's where I learned about like the highs and the lows, and then like stopping, and how she's like, your body's fucked up. Like,
yeah.
Own it. I was like, okay. Then, we'll speed it up. The divorce, we separated and stuff. And the person that I was working with, one of my foremans, knew that like I was struggling, and he was like, hey, after work today, we're gonna leave work early today, and we're gonna go, I'm gonna take you to a CrossFit class. I'm like, dude, I don't want to fucking do CrossFit. It's like I just want to go to work, and I want to come home and go to bed.
Yeah.
Like that's all I had the energy for. He's like, no, we're gonna go do CrossFit. We go to work, leave at about lunch or something, and then he waits for me in the driveway to put my shit on, and we go to CrossFit. And I get my ass kicked.
Yeah.
And, hugging the trash can, all of it. And I step on the scale there. It was the first time since fire season that I stepped on the scale, and I realized how much damage I had done to myself. I finished the season at about 190 pounds. I was at 150 pounds. And, I don't have a lot of weight to lose. that was
Because that's strength. That's the ability of you hiking gear up. That's the ability of you how long you can do all of these things at a high rate. Because now you're to the point where, hey, when on season is, are they even going to take me back?
right. And stand on that skill, that's where I realized, like, talking to the right people and this and that, nobody was going to do it for me.
Yeah.
Like, it was up to me to make the change. Like, everybody can give me all the right tools and stuff, but I have to be the one that does the work. And so it was like, right there, it's like, this is what I need. Because before, I was coping with the wrong things, and it wasn't getting me anywhere. After that workout, I got my ass kicked, but I felt great. I wasn't strong. Like, there was chicks in there that were just running circles around me, and I was just like, fuck it. I used to be able to hang, but I just beat myself up.
Yeah.
And so I signed up for like a gym right after that and just started rebuilding myself the best way I knew how, which was everything that I learned growing up. It all starts in the weight room.
Yep.
And it's replacing the negativity with something positive.
Yeah.
Started doing that, started falling in love with CrossFit. And
At the same time, are you going through divorce at this time, or are you divorced?
not yet. I was getting into CrossFit it's a long process. It's not like, hey, we're divorced and tomorrow it happens. It's, you got to wait for the judge and all that stuff.
Yeah, back in your day, you had to wait I think it was like 90 days.
You had to send a pigeon,
Yeah, you did. When I got divorced, literally you signed it, paid the money, sent it in. 25 days later, you were divorced.
Yeah.
But back when you got divorced, they gave you like 3 months. Like, are you sure?
Yeah.
Are you positive? Like, you've gone this far, but are you
This
sure?
paperwork, that paperwork.
Yeah.
And then, and that's, so I have to back up a little bit.
Go for it.
I got help, right? And then I was able to talk with my ex-wife, and this is where I had to swallow a lot of my pride. Where it's like, look, I don't agree with this, but I want you to be happy even if that's not with me. The only thing that I want more than anything is that you and I work together to set our son up for success.
Yep.
Her family had gone through a divorce when she was at a young age, and it was a living hell.
Yeah.
And I only know that through her because she told me it, constant fighting, all this, and I was like, I don't want that.
Yeah.
And
We're going to get divorced. We're going to make sure we are the best parents for our kid.
100%. And so when you're going through like divorce, and then it's like, who gets this, who gets that? I mean, it's like the claws naturally come out. The day that it was signed, done, and over with, it was like we probably didn't talk for a few days or whatever, just because, emotions are high in that situation. But us being separated, we worked out really well. Coordinating time with our son of like, sticking to the schedule, and felt like we were better friends divorced than we were married. Like, and I couldn't have asked for more.
Yeah.
I kept doing CrossFit in this time, and that's, I liked it because I was surrounded with people that wanted the same thing.
Yeah.
They wanted to just be better than they were yesterday, and I absolutely love that. And it's, when you're paying for like a CrossFit thing, you're paying it because you want to be there. And I found that those are my type of people, not because they have to, not because someone's telling them, because they want to. And when you're in that environment, like, good things happen. And the coolest thing was I was able to take my son and like have him be there with me while we're doing these workouts and him watching it. And it's like, this is how I can show him that like you can bounce back through a hard time, right? He's young enough, he probably doesn't remember. If he does, then
Good.
And so at this time I'm still fire's done. that was made pretty clear that if I were to go back to fire, I would lose all time with my
Yeah,
son.
because if you're gone, then you're
Who's gonna
giving up
watch? Yeah.
everything.
And that to me is the most important thing, is my time with my son. And you know, a lot of the guys, like I talked about earlier, would collect unemployment. I thought there was more opportunity to keep working if you just found like a good job and make more money rather than a couple $100 a week.
Yeah.
And so I got back into the concrete coatings, and that's where I stayed. About 2020, when everything was going to hell, you know, we'd been divorced for some time. We had the schedule down to a science. And I wasn't feeling fulfilled at work, where I was
Okay.
just like, there's got to be more to life than this. Where I had worked myself into a lead foreman position, so I had like my group of guys that I would run on the job site, but then I'd keep in touch with the other foremans, making sure we had a big operation going.
Yeah.
And I was working close to 100 hours a week, and we would do jobs from Arizona up and down Utah to Idaho, all around. And once again, I was gone a lot. Luckily, I was able to, like the days that I had Madden, work something out to where I could
Be there.
be there. I was just getting burned out. You know, at the time I was coming up on 8 years of doing like concrete work in between like fire and everything. And 2020, when a lot of people slowed down, that was the busiest that we had ever been because everybody was home. So they were doing a lot of home projects.
Yep.
And it was nice because I felt
Everyone's like, oh man, I gotta actually be here and live here.
yeah.
I might as well get the
Make it
floor done.
nice.
Yeah.
So I felt very fortunate that we were able to keep working during that time.
Yeah.
But about September, I started having this intuition, this feeling, and you know, we talked a little about it. I believe in God. I'm not a religious person, right? Like I don't
I'm right there with you.
necessarily believe in organized religion, but I do believe in that intuition comes from a higher power, right?
Yeah.
I start having this intuition that I've got to get out of where I'm at, and I've got to get into something that I can create my own schedule so that I don't have to ask for permission for time off. I didn't know why I was having those come in. I just ignored it for a while, but it kept getting stronger. And then I got home from a job, and I remember sitting with my mom and dad in the kitchen, and I said exactly that. I said, there's got to be more to life than this. All I do is like work, and when I'm in town for work, I go to work, I work out, and then it's like if I have Madden, I go to work and I'm hanging out with him.
Yeah.
And I love what my dad said, because it was like perfect for what I needed at the time. He's an old timer, you know, but he basically said, quit your bitching and go to work.
Nice.
Like they're paying you well, you got a good job, you're able to provide, like basically just be grateful.
Shoulder to the wheel.
So I took that as like, okay, maybe I am being ungrateful. Like, so I'll just weather this out and just,
Maybe it'll just go away.
yeah.
Yeah.
October of 2020, finally, after like, I just needed time off. So I didn't ask for permission to leave work. I just told boss, hey, I'm going for a week. I need some time to just not do work. I don't have my son this week. I'll let you know when I get back. And he was cool with it. And I went to a place where I didn't have phone service, did some hiking, basically just found my, you know, was able to relax for once. The day that I came home, I woke up and that feeling of you got to leave now was like stronger than I'd ever felt. I didn't have it that entire week until I was going home And I put my 2 weeks in that that drive home. I didn't have a backup plan of what I was going to do.
You just knew. You knew I'm done.
I'm done
working for these guys. Something else is happening, but I have to be home.
Yep. And when I told my parents, I was like, I put my 2 weeks in. They're like, "What are you going to do?" It's like, I don't know what I'm going to do.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah. I had saved all the bonuses that we were given for a couple years, knowing that, like, you know, for a rainy day. And what was funny is I had 2 weeks paid vacation through the place I was at that I hadn't used, and he worked it out where it's like, hey, why don't you use these 2 weeks to find something else, and you know, we can just be done. So it worked out for me. Helped a friend out at work for a couple months, and I still wasn't able to make my own schedule, but he's younger than me, and he had been in business for himself for about 5 years. And so I started asking him business questions like, how do you start a business? How do you run a business? What do I need to do? Like, I like working with you, but I don't want to do this. I want to do my own thing.
Yeah.
And he was kind of that mentor for me that showed me the way. And the beginning of the year, I got my general contractor, got all the like back end stuff for Major League Coatings, and did my first job February. And I was like, sweet. You know, it got to the point where I'd burned through all of my savings, getting everything set up, outsourcing the people that I didn't know what to do. I just outsourced, let the people that know what they're doing do it, and I'll do what I do. And once everything was set up, I had about $200 to my name.
Nice.
And I was like, I am one asthma attack away from my son from just being completely fucked.
Yeah.
And got my first couple jobs scheduled, and I was like, I can do this.
All right.
You know, and it was the nice thing about it that I loved was if it didn't work out, I had no one to blame but me.
Yeah.
You know, it was all, I mean, it was where I truly felt like I was 100% all in again on something. Did my first couple jobs, and then I get a phone call. And it's from somebody that I hadn't talked to in a couple of years since the divorce that never called me. And I missed the first call, and I was like, well, that's weird that this person called me.
Yeah.
If it's important, he'll call again. And phone rings. And so I was like, I knew something was wrong. And I answer the phone. I was like, what's up? And tells me that my ex-wife took her life. And I'll never forget that. That was like one thing none of us saw coming. And it was like I couldn't make sense of any of it.
Yeah.
My son it was his weekend with her that weekend, and so like I was like, okay, where's he? Like, was he there? Like, trying to get a little bit, knowing that it's like chaos right now, right, for everybody. And said he's good. He wasn't there. He was having a sleepover, you know, and long story short, I hung up. You know, I was like, let me call you back, because I couldn't believe what I just heard. And I was at my parents' house because they were out of town, dog sitting for them, and I go in the house, call my dad, and I was like kind of in shock. But as soon as I heard his voice, I lost it. And he's like, "What's going on?" And I told him what I just heard, and that sucked. They're 3 hours away. It was just me. So, was able to get my son. They came home. Son had no idea what was going on. Like, thank God,
Yeah.
And then that's when I went to the hospital and saw the damage, of like she was still alive. The lights were on, just nobody was home. And that was hell to watch. Because we didn't work out. If we did whatever, it doesn't matter. Like, that's the mother of my child.
Yeah. What's my kid's life gonna be like now?
Yeah, I've had nothing but love and respect for her for that reason, and now she's just laying there. So I went home, and now I'm just trying to, like, the doctors would say, yeah, she's gonna make it. Oh, there's this % chance, and it's got to the point where it's like it's not gonna happen. Visited the hospital a couple of times, and then the day that she passed, in February, I wasn't there, and I was just with my son, and so shitty day, shitty few days, but then I had to be the one to tell my 4-year-old son that mom's not coming home, knowing that what I'm about to share with him is going to crush him. And didn't sleep that night, obviously.
Well, we're like sorry, I'm getting emotional just listening to it. Like, I, the night before, when you're going to be talking to your son and everything, like, I've seen somebody go through that, last year and everything. Like, I'm gonna have to tell my kids, like, hey, dad's not coming home. Yeah. And things like that. What are the thoughts? Like, what that night, like, is it just a repetitive thought of, I don't know how I'm gonna say this, or what's going through your head?
The hardest thing is, how do you, because, like, talking to an adult, you can talk about it.
Yeah.
The hardest thing is, how do you communicate that to a 4-year-old's level to where they can understand? And, so I had to call, like, somebody that had specialized in this to get some, like, tips of, like, I don't want to traumatize him by saying the wrong thing. Like, how do I get this message across? And
Smart.
He gave me this tip. I'm not gonna, basically say what it was, but it was perfect, considering the circumstance. And this person told me to go someplace quiet, peaceful, and to where it's just you and him. If you can find a place that you don't have phone service, great, because my phone's fucking blowing up. People that want to know, don't need to know, and I was like, I just need to be here right now.
Yeah.
And so I take him up, and he's, like, just full of life, and the hardest thing was driving up there and, like, knowing that, like, what I'm about to tell him is going to just completely flip his life upside down. But it had to be done. And I put it around when we got to where we were going, of like, fuck, I don't think I can do this. And finally there was that opportunity where he was in a place that like we could talk and listen because he was playing around like kids do. And I had to tell him that mom was sick, and that she's not coming home. You know, and that's when it fucking hits you like a rock watching all this life, and just boom. He's like, "What are you talking about? I was just with her. Like, I just saw this." Like, at that,
she's fine.
That age, you don't understand what death means. That death is final.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's like, explain. That's where like how our upbringing in the church definitely helps. Where it's like, you know, she's with Jesus now, and Jesus is watching over her, and it's like telling him that even though we can't see her, she's still with us, and she'll always be in our hearts, and she'll always watch over and protect you. Yeah, that day sucked, and I wouldn't wish that on anybody. Both of us cried and, you know, hugged it out. And then the thing that I learned getting, like, me and him worked with specialists and stuff so that we could heal and get back going, right? Adults handle things differently than kids, where adults, they're either going to drink or, you know, sedate or find a healthy outlet or something. Kids my son's case was like hyperactive in playing, and that was his coping mechanism, right? And so he just wanted to go and play and just let it out.
Yeah.
So yeah, drove home, and then, you know, you gotta have a funeral, right? And they let us go and say goodbye before, like, she was put in the casket and stuff, and holding my son. And that's the first time I didn't take him to the hospital. He didn't need to see that. You know, they had her done up all pretty, and that was the first time that he'd seen her. And I was just there for him. And that's when I see it just finally, like, not finally, but
well, that's a big click.
And, you know, I love my son to death, and that he's been through more than most adults will go through in his life, you know. But he's one of the most resilient kids, and like, you've met him, and he's just completely full of life. You know?
Oh yeah.
We had to do some work together, and that's where, like, everything with work, everything shut down, and it was just me and him, and getting used to our new normal that everybody talks about, right? So get that under, and then I don't know. I'm gonna have to let you take over for a sec.
Man, you worked with a lot of specialists to kind of like cope and try to get back on track somehow. Like, somehow life has to move forward, even though your son will no longer have his mother.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and like,
the thing is, like, how do you move forward with that? It's not something that everybody has to deal with.
Yeah.
Thank God. But there are people that have dealt with it.
Yeah.
And so it's finding, okay, we need to talk to somebody. Like, I can't just solve this on my own.
Yeah.
And, you know, we were given a lot of hope and a lot of like tools that we keep in our tool bag of like, things that I could do, which was get him in a stable environment, like around good people where there's like a simple schedule to where it's like you have something to look forward to, right? And for him, it was like letting him play it out with his toys and like having a conversation that way, right? And it's not being like at that level, like it's not being overbearing of like, well, let's talk about this and like this constant just bombardment of trauma.
Let's
It's
give
like,
time to heal.
yeah, like when you want to talk to me about it, he'll bring it up, so, and he did.
Yeah.
But the times I'm not forcing it on him to talk about. And that's what I think helped us so much was that it was like I was in that position. This is kind of where it goes full circle of like once me and him got to essentially where we are today, where all those feelings that I was having started to make sense.
Yeah.
Of you need to have a schedule to where you can make pivots and changes. And, so we were able to take that time and work on that. And at our own pace, too.
I also think a lot of times, with kids, I think we underestimate them a lot of like, no, we need to talk about this with them. We need to get them in a chair and we're going to have a time to connect. You and me, we're going to get real deep and you're going to open up to me. And this is how I'm going to understand my child and what their psychology is and everything. I think as parents, we just need to understand like, hey, if we create stability and honesty, then your kid will come to you and say, I got to talk to you.
Yep.
I need, and that's something I believe is not something that's taught when we're kids.
No.
It's, you tell your kids the rules when you want to get serious with them, and they need to tell you all the things. Like I remember for me personally, like my parents would sit me down and be like, they talk about like how's, girls in high school and stuff like that. And it's more so like, I'd rather come to you than you sit me down and get serious about that. Right. Not to make light of of what we're talking about, but like with Madden, even though he is younger at that time and everything, he has the ability to cope in his own way, and he doesn't have to understand everything.
Right.
And you don't have to really get to the moment of like, hey, this is how it's going to go. And this is what you need to understand. And this is how deep we need to go into what's going on with your mother's passing and everything like that. And I find that with Penny is, if I ever try to get her in a moment of like, well, we're going to talk seriously, she's like,
checked out.
But then there's those little things that she'll say in the car when you're driving, man. I feel like that's like the number one place that kids start talking deep stuff.
Yeah.
And it's the number one place where I normally don't talk about a lot of deep stuff. I'm either listening to music, I'm thinking about business, stuff like that. But like, it's like one little thing, like, a big thing that's, we're coping with right now is our family situation has changed because Penelope's dad moved because he's furthering his education in another state. Well, Penelope doesn't understand what that really means.
Right.
Like, because she's so used to, I go to dad's house on the weekends and I get to go have fun with dad and Jordan, right? And it's those moments in the car where she's like, so, like, I'm not gonna go to dad's this weekend. No, you're not. And then, like, tears and everything. It's like, well, would you like to talk about it? Yeah. Because we can talk about this if you want to have, questions and everything like that. And vice versa, like she's with him for, a month out of the summer. Her understanding, okay, I'm not going to see mom and Dusky for 30 some odd days. You know, like, what does that mean? And I feel like kids, they have to go into it, and then you just have to allow them to have those questions. And I feel like converting that over to our lives of where we are right now, being an entrepreneur, that's actually how I view anybody and everybody I work with when it comes to like Rogue World or any of my investments is like almost like a kid. Like, you could tell your kid that there's ice cream in the freezer, but not every single time is the kid going to say, "Okay, I want the ice cream in the freezer," right? Eventually they'll come and say, "Hey, I'm ready." Right? Especially for me, you know, as somebody who deals a lot with investments and everything, people talk about sales, like this is the best way to close somebody. Like this is how you do it. You know, with you, when you're giving a quote or you're giving a bid for a floor, you know, like this is the best way to do X, Y, and Z. Or here's 3 tips you need to know. Sure, those are cool to know, but when it comes to going to somebody and saying, "Hey, here's the information at the level of your understanding from my perception."
Right.
When you ask me questions, I'll answer them. When you're ready to know or ready to get involved in that, I'll give that to you. That all answers are available to you, but just because I don't tell you X, Y, and Z doesn't mean I'm not trying to. It's just that from my understanding,
When you come.
that's what we give. That's how proper sales and proper things are built, is built through honesty and communication and stability.
Well, it's like with sales, like how many times when you try to force a sale onto somebody, do they pull back?
No, every time.
Every time. It's like it can be used with kids, you know, just like you're saying. And it's when it's, you know, welcoming and inviting and it's just like natural, and it's because it's like, yeah, you want to be able to talk to your kid, but it's like when they're ready, they'll let you know.
Yeah.
You know, and it's a huge lesson that, you know, growing up, it was, what did you do? Tell me now, you know? And
Yeah. You're in so much trouble. You're not going to be taking the sacrament for a couple weeks.
yeah. And, you know, so it's like, how do I want to like be with my son? You know, it's like, that didn't work with me. Well, let's try this.
Yeah.
And he came to me and talked to me when he wanted to. And it was that, okay, I know now of having a couple conversations with him that it's probably only going to be like a 2 or 3 minute conversation. Then he's going to want to talk about Superman or Spider-Man or something, you know?
Or karate.
And that's totally fine. And what was difficult is, so it's like, that's why I believe so importantly in like having the right people around you, because the wrong people can just either keep you stuck or keep you and drag you down further. And I had really and still have really good people around us. And what was difficult is when we split, I didn't have to deal with them anymore. It was just like I could just focus on my ex-wife and our son. You know, like when it was time for us to swap days or whatever, we just worked directly. I didn't have to deal with everybody else, and I loved it. It was nice. And, you know, without getting into it, it's the best thing that I can say is that sometimes like the people that got you to today isn't going to be the ones that get you to tomorrow. Like,
Yeah.
people change, right?
Yeah.
And it's cutting people out that aren't meant to be there. It's a hard thing to do at first, especially when like a younger version of you would just let disrespect and happen to you, right?
Yeah.
When you finally draw that line and say like, this is my boundary, this is like what I will tolerate and not tolerate, Well, the people that known you for a long time are so used to you going back on your word and you going like, oh yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Colt's just, talking some shit now, and we'll be able to talk him into this again.
Yeah.
You've got to, when you set that line in the sand or wherever it is, you have to stick to it. And when you do, there's going to be that pushback.
Oh yeah, for sure. With what you're saying exactly, like, and I've talked about this on a couple other podcasts, is I feel like when you upgrade your life, that naturally your people that are around you upgrade.
Yeah.
Either they upgrade with you or you outgrow them. It doesn't mean like you have no room for, oh, okay, I'm doing better in life, so that means all my old friends, they're gone, and I have new friends now. It doesn't work that way. You'll have that high school buddy that you remember those times. You'll go to dinner with them and you'll hang out with them and you'll love them. It's talking about, okay, my psyche of who I surround myself. Who do I call in times of need? Who do I call with? I mean, I have people to this day that the person they call with a great idea is me, because they know that my life trajectory is going upwards and they want theirs too as well, and that I will not play a negative influence on their dreams, on what they want. Right? I also have people that will contact me, and probably you do too, that they'll call me on their worst days, or they'll text me and say, today just sucks. Can I call you? Can I talk to you? And I'm like, absolutely. My phone. If you have my number, then you have every right to contact me whenever you need help, or not even help, just an ear to listen to, just somebody to be there for you. And I feel like when you are upgrading your life, you're gonna have people that aren't ready to grow. And you could say, hey, if you're not ready to grow yet, and you don't really say this, but when you're on that journey, sometimes they'll, I don't know how to say, like, if you're like I would say a pot of water. That's the only way I can think about it. Like, let's just say you're like a bowl of water, right? They're throwing their, like their quarters into you to remind you, like, hey, I'm still here. Like, don't forget about me. Don't leave me behind. And it's like, I got to, right? Like, you can come with me. You have a free ticket on the road to where I'm going. But if you're not going to do the work that I am, then you're going to leave behind. And that's why a lot of my businesses and everything, like new businesses, new ideas, things, they come out a lot. Like, people know that Dusky is always moving. Like, I'm always going forward. I always have something new that's fresh, and then all my businesses are running at the same time, right? And people can see it in two ways. They can see popcorn, where they see, oh, it's boom, 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 boom. Or people can see how it is, where it's a river, right? And a river keeps cutting deep into a canyon every single day. It takes time, but every day, that river's going to new places, it's seeing new things, and it could get bigger if you're feeding it correctly from your source. It could get smaller, which means less is flowing down that. Sure. But if you're a big river, big flows, big things are coming, a lot of ideas, a lot of, I would say, pivots or changes. I feel like in entrepreneurs, we talk about pivoting a lot. And I think it's there's the side of like people like, oh, this guy's like always moving. I'm like, yeah, have you ever watched a freaking river?
Yeah.
Like, a river goes around, and then if it absolutely can't go anywhere, then it just keeps hitting where it has to go until it breaks it through. But if it doesn't have to break it through, if I've found this, if somebody's in a business with you and your business is going to go 10 times more if you drop that person, it doesn't mean I don't like you.
Right.
It just means it's not your time, and that partnership is not beneficial when you're that ball and chain,
Yep. 100%.
I mean, that is, especially in your life now you're a full-time single dad, right? You have a brand new business at this time, which from then has taken off. You're a busy guy. And, eventually you meet someone else. So now you're trying to date, you're trying to be an entrepreneur and be a full-time dad with, he has grandparents and stuff. There's a support system because you surrounded yourself with the correct people. I'm just saying, anybody else in your life that was like, oh, do you want to come hang out and, get drunk tonight and feel like shit tomorrow? Like, generally probably isn't your vibe.
No.
Like, it's not, it's because sure, I would have loved to do that when I was like freaking 20, 21, 23. Heck, there's nights where I like to go out and drink and have a good time, but that's not who I am. I can't just drop it on a Tuesday and be like, yeah, let's throw all cares to the wind because I don't have any responsibilities like you, because I have all the freaking responsibilities. Mm-hmm. I feel like that there's just definitely a way that life just kind of weeds out people.
Yeah.
You kind of move on. My biggest interest in kind of something that you kind of we've talked about a lot is how we share our message, how we get out with more people, at Rogue World and everything, and you kind of stepping into this, hey, now I've built a successful business. Like, now I have actually built something where I don't work for anybody else but myself. I can balance whatever my son has going on. I can balance kind of all of these things in one place. There's a different switch when it comes to, I now can teach somebody that they can do it too. What makes you qualified, or like what do you believe is the thing that says like, hey, I can teach somebody else and I can help others along this journey to get to the point where you can have a successful business, be an entrepreneur, a full-time dad, dating, getting ready to go into maybe a second marriage in a little while. Like, what makes you kind of qualified to, not necessarily, when I use the word qualified, but what do you believe is that calling inside you to make you be able to teach somebody else?
What makes me qualified, I think, is, well, I know it's because I've gone through it myself and I'm doing it currently, right? From my knowledge, most businesses fail in the first year.
Yeah.
Right? I'm on year 3. And not only that, I've been able to grow every year. And so yeah, it's because I've gone through it myself. And if I'm the one that's telling you that you can do it, it's because I've seen it be done. And the people that helped me a lot were the ones that just gave me that little, like, you can do it, right? It's not that like I didn't believe that it could be done. Like, I knew what I brought to the table, which is why I left where I was at.
Yeah.
And I was not afraid to eat alone.
In your business, when you want to share something that we've talked about, you and I, we've gotten together and you're like, hey, I have something inside me.
Yeah.
There's something here that I believe others would benefit from. Right?
Right.
Like, what would that be?
Well, so what I see is, the people that do reach out, right? That I have this idea or I want to do this. And I think that's great. And the thing that sucks is a lot of it is kids that I went to high school with.
Yeah.
Not kids now, but people I went to high school with that are talking about doing shit that they were talking about ages ago.
When they're in high school.
Yeah. It's like, what do you want to do when you get out of high school? I want to do this. And then it's, still not doing it. And it's scary. It's fucking scary because a lot of like people are so used to just punching in, punching out, and that's fine. But it's like my how I approach things now is it's not to be morbid, but death I think about is death, you know? And it's the way I think about it is not to get scared by it, is to get motivated by it. Where I want to think about like, okay, if you like, I'm a huge visualization guy. Like that's how I was with sports. That's how I am with like my business and everything. Is I visualize it happening before it actually happens. But I visualize me on my deathbed. You know, and like who's around me, who's not around me, but also that like your final moments or whatever. Are you having feelings like fuck? I should have just started that thing. I should have asked that girl out.
Yeah.
I should have taken that vacation. Or are you like, that was a hell of a ride. Like,
Peace.
we're out of here, you know? And so it's like,
It's a close of the show.
yeah, that when you use like death as a motivator, I feel it's very beneficial. You know, it's like your friend that you were talking about. But it's like some people take that and it's like, oh, that's very dark, you're too morbid. And it's not to be taken in that way. It's just like I have seen and physically seen how short and fragile life is. And it's like the biggest thing is like I want to see life as for as long as I can, and I want to enjoy all of it as long as I can. But I also don't want to fucking answer to anybody doing it. I don't want to ask for permission to take my son on a camping trip, right? It's like taking that step and believing yourself to where it's like hopefully when that day comes, hopefully it's a long, long time from now, I can look back and be like, that was a hell of a ride. And, you know, look to God and say, thank you. Like, what's next? You know,
Yep.
I don't want to have any regrets. And, you know, so the people that like have reached out to me where it's like trying to get them to see that to where it's like, you don't have to go through what I went through to make that change. Right. Like if that is something that is burned inside to you to where it's like I can only speak on my experiences and what I've gone through, right? But I had a skill, I had a trade that I did very, very well. And once I hit the ceiling and there was no room for growth, the only other place to go is either sit and ride that out the rest of my life until I'm crippled and can't walk, or do what I did.
But do it by yourself.
And, you know, to people listen, like it is scary, it is hard, but that's where it's like it's great. It's like, what are you good at? Like, what is your niche, right? Do what you do and then outsource the things that you don't know to the people that know how to do that, right? You don't know how to do your books, outsource it. You don't know how to do your taxes, outsource it, right? Make your life easier and get the right people around you to where you can focus on your craft and your trade and your dream. And then it's like these people are taking care of the rest for you, and, you know, c'est la vie.
Love it. Heck yeah. Well, Colton, it has been awesome to have you on this podcast, and a hell of a story. And I'm excited to see you around the rogue world more often and everything. But I appreciate you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. It was awesome.
What's the best way people could contact you if they wanted to reach out, know more about you, had questions, maybe they've gone through similar things, need help?
Sure.
What's the best way?
Best way is on Instagram at stone.colt. And just shoot me a message. And, you know, if this thing is, like I said earlier, is you don't have to go through something traumatic like I did to make a change. Like it's a lot simpler than a lot of people make it out to be, right? And it's like you said earlier with like business relationships, you know, father, like being a parent, your body, it's like I have developed like my own set of core values to where it's like I no longer am a guy that just punches in, punches out, and lives a one-dimensional life.
Yeah.
Right? It's these core values are like goals that I have that are specific targets to where it's like, message me and I can help you out.
Heck yeah. Love it. Well, for all of you that have listened, we thank you so much that you're a part of this podcast, and we will see you in episode 3.